Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video of MTG Foil. Today I've got a special deck for you to share. It's a deck I'm particularly proud of. It's modern. This deck is built around one card, and that's the Pelt Collector. It costs 1 green mana. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, if the creature power is greater than Pelt Collector, put a 1/1 counter on Pelt Collector. As long as Pelt Collector has 3 or more 1/1 counters on this, it has trample. It's a really cool card. Just came with the Ravnica set in October last year. And what's so good about this card is that you can actually make it grow really quickly. In some cases you can make this card a 4/4 in the second turn, which is really impressive. And how I gonna do that, of course I'm gonna show you. This deck is based on 3 colors. Well, actually it has 4 colors, so that means it has a complicated mana base. If you compare this with, for example, goblins or a burn deck, this is a little bit more complicated. And if you've got a complicated mana base, the deck usually costs more money, especially fetch lands and shock lands. I've got only one basic land in this deck, and this is a forest. It has a little bit to do with a Blood Moon. If we keep at least one forest, there might be a chance to play away a Blood Moon. Initially I didn't have any basic lands in this deck, but when I had faced a Blood Moon in a match, I realized that I didn't have any basics. To prevent this deck losing from a Blood Moon, I have got 1 forest in this deck. And then I've got 4 wooden foothills. Pay 1 life, sacrifice wooden foothills, search a library for a mountain or a forest card and put it in the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Another 3 bloodstained mires, 3 off, sacrifice it, pay 1 life, sacrifice bloodstained mire, search a library for a swamp or mountain card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. A 3 off. Initially I had 4, but I replaced 1 for a forest after the match vs the Blood Moon. Stomping Grounds. So this comes into play tapped unless you're gonna pay 2 lives, and it produces 1 red or 1 green mana. And it's a mountain or a forest, so we can actually fetch it with the fetch lands. 3 off. And then we have got 3 Overgrown Tomb. It's a swamp and a forest, so again we can fetch it. As Overgrown Tomb enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 lives. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped, and it produces 1 black or 1 green. And then we come to Blood Crypt. It comes into play tapped unless you pay 2 lives, and it produces 1 red and 1 black mana, and it's a swamp and a mountain. A 3 off. And then we've got 1 card, the Sacred Foundry. It's a mountain and a plains, and as well you can pay 2 lives, and if you do, it comes untapped into play. So that's the mana base. You might think, wow, you're gonna lose life using these lands. That's correct. There's a meaning behind it. That is that we are actually playing Death Shadow, which I will show you soon. So that's the mana base. Like I said, it's a complex mana base. If you're gonna play this deck, take a pause to realize which kind of land you want to fetch and what colors you need. You can actually fetch what you need. Okay, then we come to the instants and sorceries. I'm running 3 Mutagenic Growth. It's an instant. You can pay it with 2 lives, or you can actually pay it with 1 green forest. Target creature get +2/+2 until the end of turn. This is a great card as well with Death Shadow, and even if you're tapped out, people don't expect this card. So if you're blocking, a creature get blocks or get, for example, a lightning bolt, you can just cast it being tapped out with paying 2 lives, and you can save the creature or you can finish your opponent. People don't expect it. A 3 off, and then we have got, of course, the lightning bolt. Yes, I managed to get this playset. Was it worth the money? Definitely. Really beautiful card. 3 times a lightning bolt. if you're new to this game and you're watching this and you don't know what Lightning Bolt does, although I doubt it, what it does, it deals 3 damage to any target and it's an instant. Really cool card, should be in every red deck. Lightning Bolt. And then we have gotten Sorcery, and this is a really good card in this deck particularly. For 1 black mana you can play this Sorcery. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Really nice. And then when it's in your graveyard, it has the ability Aftermath. For 1 red and 1 colorless, Aftermath. Cast this spell only from your graveyard and then exile it. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until the end of turn. Especially if you combine it with, for example, Vexing Devil, or of course Death Shadow itself. So 2 off in this deck. Then we come to the creatures actually. So here we have got Pelt Collector, a 4 off, basically where the deck is built around. Really impressive card. If you're lucky to have this in your opening hand, then it's time to let it grow. Pelt Collector, a 4 off. Another 1-drop, Experiment 1. It has Evolve. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has a greater power and toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Remove 2 +1/+1 counters from Experimental 1, regenerate Experiment 1. Nice card, it's only a 1-off, because what we're trying to do is make all these creatures grow fast. And how we're gonna do that? In the second turn, of course, we're trying to get a Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil, really cool card, especially in this deck. Because 1 red, it's a 4/3, so really strong. 1 downside, and that is when Vexing Devil enters the battlefield, any opponent may have it deals 4 damage to him or her. If the player does, sacrifice Vexing Devil. What we're trying to do with this card is, for example, when Pelt Collector is in the game, casts Vexing Devil the second turn, it triggers the Pelt Collector ability. It gives a +1/+1 counter, same for Experimental 1. But if your opponent actually decide to vanish for 4 lives, then it triggers again the Pelt Collector ability, so Pelt Collector becomes a 3/3, so that's really nice. And if it gets to the graveyard and you've got, for example, Claim in your hand, the Sorcery can actually get it back, and then if they're gonna take another 4 lives, it's gonna be a lot of damage. And even if you have not a Pelt Collector on the battlefield, you can actually save Vexing Devil from a Lightning Bolt with Mutagenic Growth. A lot of players actually choose not to take 4 damage when they've got a Lightning Bolt in their hand, and they try to get it away with a Lightning Bolt, but if you've got a Mutagenic Growth, you can actually save it. And then, of course, no deck without the goblins. If you're playing red, you should always play Goblin Guide, a 4 off, no doubt about it. 1 red mana, comes into play, has haste. Whenever Goblin Guide attacks, the defending player reviews the top card of her library, of his or her library. If that's a land card, that player put it into his or her hand. So, really nice intel card. Yeah, it can be bad if they're drawing land, but hey, we're dealing damage fast. So, definitely a 4 off. Then another 1-drop, Wild Nakedi. Wild Nakedi, it's a creature, a cat warrior, costs 1 green mana. Wild Nakedi gets +1/+1 as long as you control a mountain. Wild Nakedi gets +1/+1 as long as you control plains. That actually declares the Sacred Foundry, because this is actually a mountain and a plains. So if you fetch this land, it becomes actually a 3/3 for 1 green mana, and it will actually trigger your Pelt Collector as well. So a 4 off, and there are so many ways to actually get a Sacred Foundry. And then we come to a point that you actually triggered Pelt Collector with all the 1-drops. With, for example, the Goblin Guide and the Wild Nakedi. There's another way to trigger it, and that's with Death Shadow. Death Shadow, it's a really impressive card. It costs 1 black mana. Death Shadow gets --, where the X is your life total. It's a 13/13. So basically, if you've got 13 lives, it's a 0/0. If you become below the 13, it adds up. So if you've got 5 lives, it's an 8/8. When Pelt Collector is already a 4/4, and you've drained a lot of lives by actually using your lands. And for example, mutagenic growth, yeah, it can grow really fast, and of course your opponent is dealing your damage as well. And then we have 2 drops, Burning Tree Emissary, cost 2 green or 2 red. When Burning Tree Emissary enters the battlefield, add 1 red, 1 green to your mana pool. And we have got a 4-off, it's basically free 2/2 creature, especially if you combine it with the Reckless Bushwhacker. Another goblin in this deck. Normally it costs 1 red mana and 2 colorless, and it has haste. When Reckless Bushwhacker enters the battlefield, if its search cost was paid, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And you can actually pay the search cost when you have cast another spell before in the same turn. So you can actually do this with example to combine this with Burning Tree Emissary or Death Shadow. So it gives Death Shadow haste, or you can do it with any 1-drop. As well, if you've got only 2 lands and you can cast a mutagenic growth. If you've got just 2 lands, just cast that with 2 lives, and you can cast it and give everything haste +1/+0 until the end of turn. And to actually cycle through your deck, we have got 4 times Street Wraith. It's a 2 black, 3 colorless creature for 3/4, and it has Swamp Walk, and it has cycling. Pay 2 lives, discard, draw a card. It helps you actually, reduces your life. That helps you with searching for a Death Shadow. So this is the deck. I tried it out. It's a really amazing fast deck. Like I said, in the second turn you can have a 4/4 with Trample, and the Vexing Devil with the mutagenic growth is a really cool strategy to use. And as well, some cards are not expected, like this card, and then Claim and Fame. Kill Vexing Devil, you can just recast it for 1 black mana. It's a really OP ability to use it like that. And it's just luring in your graveyard. If you're waiting and you can actually pay the Fame cost, you can cast any creature and give it haste. They forget about it, so it's a big surprise for them. Okay, let's switch to the sideboard. So first I start with Leyline of the Void. It costs 2 black and 2 colorless mana. It's an enchantment. If Leyline of the Void is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. If a card would be put in an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. It's a really cool card vs Dredge and of course Storm. And of course it leaves your own graveyard alone, which in this case is very necessary or very handy if you're using cards like Claim and Fame. So it's a nice add to put in this deck. And if it's in your opening hand, you can cast it immediately. So a really nice card to put in this deck, Leyline of the Void. To destroy artifacts and enchantments, I've got 3 times Destructive Revelries. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, Destructive Revelry. Deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So basically a really good card vs Blood Moons, Leylines and other artifacts like Ensnaring Bridge or Chalice of the Void, etc. It's a really necessary card to put this in this deck. That's why we're running at least 1 green mana, and as well the Burning Tree Emissary can help you cast this card. So a 3-off, especially if you know that your opponent has a Blood Moon, you should definitely board this in. Then for Tron and for Storm, I've running 3 cards. 2 cards, Dampening Sphere, really good vs Tron and Storm. If a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 colorless instead of any other type and amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 colorless more to cast for each other spell the player has cast this turn. So vs Storm, and as well for example Tron, because other Tron lands produces only 1 mana instead of hundreds. It only slows you down as well, so keep that in mind. It slows you down, but does it really matter if it slows a Storm down or a Tron? Usually you're dead anyway. And then 1 Alpine Moon. When Alpine Moon enters the battlefield, choose a non-basic land card name. Lands your opponent controls with the chosen name lose all land types and abilities, and they gain tap at 1 mana of any color. So if you're aiming, for example, Ursa's Tower, their Tron gets shut down. 2 Ignot Chewers. You might think, why 2 Ignot Chewers? It's a 3/3, costs 1 red mana and 4 colorless. When Ignot Chewers enter the battlefield, destroy target artifact, and it has Evoke. You may cast this spell for this Evoke cost. If you do, sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. Well, a Pelt Collector is a 1/1, and the Experiment 1 is as well 1/1. If this enters the battlefield, it triggers their +1/+1 ability, and especially with the Pelt Collector, if it gets sacrificed immediately, it triggers again. So this card for 1 mana can make it actually give it 2 times a +1/+1 counter, and you're destroying 1 artifact. That's why I included this in the sideboard vs artifacts. Then I've got 2 other creature removal cards. It's a Shriek Maw, 1 black mana, 4 colorless, a 3/2. It has Fear. When Shriek Maw comes into play, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. And as well it has Evoke for 1 black and 1 colorless. So again, you can choose to use the Evoke cost. It will actually trigger your Pelt Collector as well 2 times when it's a 1/1, and you can destroy a non-black, non-artifact creature. Really nice to put in here. If you've got Pelt Collector on the battlefield, triggers Pelt Collector. And then I've got Dismember. It's for the giants out there. If there are a lot of big creatures, for 2 times 2 lives and 1 colorless, you can cast Dismember, or you can play it with 2 black mana or 2 lives. Target creature get -5/-5 until end of turn. So you can destroy a big giant creature. Could be handy if Death Shadow is on the field, it immediately grows Death Shadow. So this was the deck. I hope you like it. If you've got tips or tricks, or you have got improvements, always let me know. I hope you like this deck. This deck has actually won tournaments. This is a really competitive deck. It requires some advanced game knowledge. Like I said, it's a really good deck. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video very soon.